Hello, my Earthling peeps. This message I've got today is actually on my own personal experience with raising my children. So please, I'm going to let you know now, I am not an expert, okay? And I'm not daring to tread upon anybody else's way they parent their kids or anything like that, okay? I'm just telling you about my personal experience and what I did with parenting my own kids, being from a psychic family. It started out that my mother didn't really want to bring up too much about her experiences. It hasn't been until like in very recent times that my mom is starting to come out more about her experiences, because the only one that she really would talk about if we asked her, she didn't go around talking about this, you know what I mean? And that's, my mom is 88 and she comes from a generation where you don't talk about ETs or paranormal or anything like that. But now that things are starting to change, and that and things are coming out more, and that I think she's starting to let her guard down a little and realize that what her parents had said, back in those times, and that it, back that worked. You kept your mouth shut. Anybody that talked of these things, unfortunately would be considered a freak. But thank God now people are starting to be a lot more open about these things, and my mom is one of them. Unbelievable, right? It's amazing, because my mom is one of the hugest skeptics on the planet, but she's finally starting to admit some things that she went through, and that I'm curious to see. She says that her first experience was seeing this huge mothership when she was a teenager. I think she said she was around 16, and then I guess she had some other little experiences of seeing things in the sky and stuff, and she had paranormal stuff going on. And it's funny, you'll find a lot of times that people who are either, they consider themselves a paranormal experiencer, I wonder how much too, though, that they're experiencing extraterrestrial stuff, and vice versa. People who are only talk of that they've had extraterrestrial experiences, I wonder if they've actually had paranormal experiences, but because their focus has been so much with ETs, that they're not recognizing that they actually have both. Because I tend to find that a lot of people who have experiences in the paranormal or ETs, they usually have both. Whether or not they recognize both of them, that's a different story. But anyways, getting back to things, when it came to my own children, and I'm going to tell you why, I did not just outright dismiss when my children would go to bed at night and claiming that they saw something, okay? And here is why, okay? As I said before, I come from a family of psychic experiencers, and I'm sure, obviously, I didn't know my grandmother, what kind of experiences she had, because she didn't talk about them. Like I said, you're talking about the generations before, you didn't talk about that kind of stuff. But I have a feeling that it probably goes back a lot further. Now, while there is some truth to this part, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only, like it has to do with only like the blood type. Because they have found people who have O positive blood, O negative blood also have had experiencers. But for some reason, they know, like, especially when it comes to like extraterrestrials and that, the people who have the RH blood tend to have, are really picked out for whatever you want to call it, extraterrestrial abduction or whatever. But that doesn't mean that the other blood types don't get it too. But they know for a fact that the RH, there's something about RH blood. Now, I don't have RH blood. I don't think. I don't know. I don't know if I ever had my blood tested, that I can remember finding out what blood type I am. I should know it. I know. But I don't know. I guess I could go to my doctor and ask them. I'm pretty sure, though, that I'm not an RH. I think they would have told me that, because RH also, you know, uh, is more rare, and it's important in case you're, in a severe accident or something. Even though there is I think is it the O negative or whatever that can give to anybody? But anyways, I'm pretty sure I'm not an RH. However, my grandmother, I found out from my mother, had one of the most rare bloods in the world. She was RHAB negative. And not a lot of people have that kind of blood, but my grandmother did. Okay. I think my mom said she's an O positive and that. So, but then my mom had experiences. Now, it does make me wonder, is it because of my grandmother having that very rare blood, and we're all, descendants, or, I can't really say, or is it just that we're more open to our intuitive side to us, whereas maybe other people, just haven't really embraced their intuitive skills. I don't know, but I just wanted to throw that in there. But anyways, because of this generational thing and these experiences, I felt it was important, especially because I had so many things that I couldn't explain, that I wanted my children to know that if they came to me freaked out or whatever, and that I wasn't going to sit there and do what happened to me. Now, I'm not blaming my mom in that. I love her. I love my dad. But I basically had to learn how to self-soothe. And you're talking about somebody who, not only did I have my sleep paralysis episodes and seeing ETs and stuff, and people have their views with sleep paralysis, and some don't believe that it's anything but science, and that's okay. You're entitled to believe that. I believe differently. Sorry. But when I was not in sleep paralysis episodes and stuff, I had things that were really frightful, stuff to do with the demonics, physically manifesting and stuff, especially when I became into my young adulthood and I was not asleep. I was wide awake. It wasn't bedtime or anything else. I walked into a room in my sister's home and in Louisiana and all of a sudden I'm seeing physical manifestations of demonics, right? So, which was horrible. Okay, but luckily, because I was older and everything, and realizing that the world is not what we think it is and just 3D, right? That by this time I had been learning how to cope, because I had no choice. I had to learn to cope on my own, because I didn't have anybody that I could talk to, and that I didn't want my kids to go through the same thing. So, excuse me. When my kids would come to me and talk to me, I didn't say, go to your room. It's all in your head. Go to your room. Force them to be in a dark room by themselves where they had just had something that woke them up out of their sleep, freaked them out, and just tell them it was their imagination. Okay? I was not going to do that to my kids. And let me tell you what, my kids are beautiful, amazing, healthy-minded young adults. My son is an assistant manager for a place. He's doing really well. He's out in Atlanta. My daughter is getting ready to go off to college, and she's going to be in crime solving. She wants to work in crime scene investigations to try and help crimes get solved, so that families and that can know what happened to their beloved, so, which I think is an amazing, wonderful thing. And so we'll see. I mean, obviously kids can change once they get into college, and that they might change, but that's what she's wanted to do for the last 3 years. In high school, she kept saying, I want to go into working in crime scene investigations, and now she's getting ready to go off to college for it. But getting back to things, when my kids were little and they had experiences and that, we talked about them, okay? I might have been super tired, but I was not going to dismiss it and tell them just, oh, it's your imagination. Go back in that dark room and go to bed, and another word out of you and I'm going to smack you, I'm sorry, but I mean, I know there are, and like I said, I'm not judging anybody for being parents or whatever, but to me, I just couldn't do that. I couldn't have that kind of attitude. And I'm not saying that all parents say, oh, I'm going to smack you, but, I grew up in a time where, I'm older, so I grew up in a time where spanking was, the norm, so just put that out there. But a lot of times they'll say, no, you need to just go back to bed, get over it. You're fine. It's your imagination, okay? And it might not necessarily be their imagination, okay? At least in my children's case, and being how active our family was or has been with experiences, and then the increase that we are having with activity because that veil is thinning and that, I just wanted to make sure that my kids knew that they could come to me and talk to me and let me know if there was anything that they felt fearful of. For one thing, another thing I taught them, and I was like, I would even go with them to their rooms, and I would tell them, look, you say, put your prayer out there, and say, like in my case, I say, the almighty divine creator of all, I am asking for your protection over me, over my space, because I will only allow those who are out for my best and highest good. Those who are not for my best and highest good, you are not welcome here. You must go now. And I have taught my children, say it with, even as scary as it might seem, say it with conviction, okay? Say it and let it be known, because they don't have a right to be in your space. And they're going to try to scare you and make you feel like you're this small, but you have the power. You have the power to let these unwanted, malevolent type beings know that they are not allowed in your space. Okay, and that your space is protected with the divine creator, however you want to say, the Christ-light consciousness is protecting you, is protecting your space. Ask for your protection. However you do it. Now, I'm not trying to tell anybody, I'm just saying how I believe. Okay, if you want to say God or Jesus Christ or whatever, however you choose to believe, that's totally fine. Okay, so I'm just saying, my spiritual path, and how I believe. And by the way, both of my children are they are believers. And I've always made it known to them that they needed to find their own walk with the divine creator, and that I was not going to tell them who they, how they needed to worship or what path they needed to go down, because to me, I just didn't feel that was right. I didn't want to be this controlling person of, like, it's good to be a parent, okay, but I was very much a parent. I wasn't like trying to be their buddy or anything like that, but I didn't want them to feel like, they had to see things through my way, because I just don't agree with it. Again, I'm not telling anybody out there, so anybody who's watching this video, before you start wanting to throw argument at me and that, I'm trying to tell you that I am not trying to tell anybody, because I am not an expert. I'm just saying what worked for me and with my children. But I found both of my children had thanked me, because they said that I explained to them that, like, with human spirits and stuff like that, it's just like people. You're dealing with strangers. Some strangers are okay and they're safe and they're fine, but then others might not be, because spirits are basically, people. They're people. You have good and you have bad, and you have some that, they're still spirits and they haven't crossed over yet. It might be that they're lost, and you can help them to cross over, in a good way, and this is just what I believe. And I believe that, so a lot of times, like if they are seeing a human spirit in that, they might, the spirit probably doesn't realize that he or she has passed on. So, but they're not all going to be negative in that. So I told them, you go on with your intuition and that, but remember, I've taught them not to just automatically feel fear, just because they see a ghost, right? Because I think that that's been something that's been ingrained in us from generations, that you have to fear it right away. And I didn't want my kids to live in fear, okay? And because of that, like I said, now that they've gotten older and that, surprisingly, both my kids have thanked me for that, and the fact that I listened to them and I didn't force them to self-soothe, which was what happened with me. Now, I don't blame my parents or anything. Like I said, at the time, that, none of us parents come with an instruction handbook, so we do things the best way we can. And I just didn't want my kids to feel the way that, I had to feel, and I felt so alone, and it was terrifying, because I didn't know what was the difference. I didn't know, like extraterrestrials and that, but obviously, my good experience, I basically, you could tell, your gut feeling and that, but I hated it because at the same time, I couldn't talk of any experiences, even if they were good, because that was just something you didn't do. So I wanted my kids to have that freedom and to know that they're not crazy. There is another world that exists beyond our 3D world and that, and but not to live in fear. And so I guess basically that's all that my message is today. It was more about why I chose not to dismiss my kids' experiences as being an experiencer. And that's about it. So thank you guys for listening. Love you. Take care. Have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Bye.